All right, everybody. Welcome to Cheese in Depth. I'm Michael Landis, and today we're back for segment number 3, which is Taste of Croatia. And that's really exciting because we don't really hear a lot about Croatia, but they have some fabulous cheeses and some fabulous products. And I can't wait to hear Michele talk about what some of these sheep that they have and the way they make their cheeses, and of course the history. So I'm going to turn it over to Michele Buster from Forever Cheese, and she's going to get going here. So Michele.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's so much fun to come and do these webinars with you. Hi, everyone. I know you're like, what the heck? Well, I'm prepared because today we're taking you to the island of Pag, which is in Croatia off the coast. And well, often it's sunny, so I have my sunglasses and I have my sundress. But it's known to be the windy island, and we're going to talk about how that really influences the cheese that you've bought. So have my windbreaker here because it can get really super windy from the mountain range that's off on the main island that then causes all this wind, so that the Adriatic Sea kind of blows on top of the brambles or grass. About Forever Cheese a little bit. We've been in business. We're on our 21st year. We started out with cheeses from my partner's family, the Fulvi and Cini Fulvi cheeses. And then we moved into products from Spain and then eventually Portugal because nobody was paying attention to Portugal. And then when we talk about love affairs, I fell in love with the Adriatic way before I even thought about, importing the Croatian cheese. We have a special guest today, and who's calling in from Croatia, and this is Martina. And Martina's family are some of the owners of Paška Sirana, whose cheese I've been purchasing now since like 10 years. I'm losing track for what it is. Actually, even before Martina came into the picture. And so I'd love to introduce her, have her tell you a little bit about her family there, and then we'll come back to me. And I have a presentation for you to go along with the products, introducing you to the rest of the wonderful producers and the animals and the beautiful place that I'm so in love with.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here on this webinar. It's a really nice experience, and thank you, Michele, for giving me this chance to promote my cheese and my cheese factory. I come from an island of Pag. Pag is a little island on the coast of the Adriatic Sea, and this island is often called moon-like island.
Yes, it is.
Why is it called like that? Because it's a very rocky island, and there is a little grass growing on it. So it's very, very interesting that on such a harsh and rocky island, such a good cheese is produced. Paški Sir, or Sir in Croatian means cheese. Paški means from Pag, so cheese from Pag is the most famous and most awarded Croatian cheese. You can find it in the menu of almost every restaurant in Croatia, and it won a lot of awards on World Cheese Awards, Global Cheese Awards, and it won Gold and the Best in Category awards. So it's really, really good and really premium quality cheese from Croatia. And it is the only cheese in Croatia that has DOP or PDO, Protected Designation of Origin mark. So that means this is really special cheese that can only be produced on this island and nowhere else.
And how long have you been working on that DOP? For those of you who don't know what DOP is, or PDO, it's Protected Denomination of Origin, or Denominazione d'Origine Protetta. And what it means is it's like a recipe to protect a product, in this case cheese, that has to follow certain regulations and certain laws, and it's overseen by a regulatory body. So they have to take milk from the island, they have to make it in a certain way, it has to have They have to feed on the grass. It has to have all the microflora that come in there. How many species of different microflora on the island? It's crazy.
Yes, a lot actually. But as I said before, it's a moon-like island. It's a very, very rocky island, and you really have when you come, the first sight when you come to Pag is really like you've been come.
We can show that.
Yeah,
we can show that if we start even as we talk, we can start the presentation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, what I wanted to say that this cheese, Paški Sir cheese, it contains the essence of the island of Pag. This rocky landscape with a lot of with a little grass growing on it, but this grass that grows on the island of Pag is very special, very aromatic, full of salt that is brought from the Adriatic Sea by this strong wind that Michele mentioned. Bura. Yes, Bura is very strong wind, and in the winter it can really blow very, very hard. Yes, you have a feeling that there is a hurricane, but we're all used to our Bura. Bura is a synonym to a good wind that will bring a nice weather and a nice attitude, or I don't know, nice mood. In comparison with Jugo, which is the wind that gives you like a bad mood and a rain. So Bura is very important ingredient of Paški Sir because our pastures where our sheep live, they are very salty.
Well, so and it's really hard to call them pastures. I mean,
yes,
that's a very poetic term. I think we should start the presentation a little so we show some of the flavor of what this island looks like. I mean, pasture is really a long shot because there is so much rock. And I mean, I started going to Pag in like 2005, 2006, and I didn't even see a sheep my first couple years. I was climbing into people's backyards when I saw a sheep because I was like, oh my God, there's a sheep, there's a sheep. They make sheep cheese there. But you couldn't see them. And even most recently, a couple years ago when I came to visit you, they blended into the rocks because it was mainly, I don't even know what they were eating. They were sitting there grazing, but it was 98% rocks with just a few brambles.
Yes, they're licking salty stones and salty herbs.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and sometimes you have a feeling that it's mimicry. We call it in Croatian mimicry, like the stones and the sheep are. Yeah.
Look at that beautiful place. Yay, wonderful cheese. And you'll see soon the label encompasses lace, and lace is very important to the island of Pag and their Croatia and their culture. This is the cheese. This is the 1-year age cheese. This is what you've received. It's what Forever Cheese has decided to import to the US. There are lesser aged Paški Sir cheeses, but this is the most famous that people like to put on a plate and pour some olive oil over it and enjoy it that way. In fact, when I first got to the island, I want to show you some pictures of it and tell you the story of how I found this cheese. But that was the first way I ever ate the cheese with olive oil drizzled over it. So this is where we're talking. So north of Zadar. Zagreb, as you can see, is northeast up here, but this is where Pag comes from. And there is the island of Pag, and there is the town of Pag. And keep that in mind for the story that I have coming up. There we go. There's some sheep. You see how rocky it is, and they're just it's kind of not a whole lot of grass and different things, but they are lucky because they do get to gaze out at the sea quite often. This was in the back of those apartments where I always go, where I keep all the way going to the north of the island and just go walking. And this is where I caught some. I snuck up on the sheep. Here you go. This is a view I love. As you come in and you just see like the rolling landscape and all the rocks that come in here, and further beyond from this too, it just is where it really looks so lunar. And you just feel like you're literally in another place. I mean, just so dramatic, all the different parts of it. Let's go to one more before I tell the story of how I was taught this cheese and how I met all of the different, when I first started looking for this cheese, well, I have to say I didn't start looking for the cheese. I went to Croatia on vacation. It took me forever to get there because a friend of mine, when I used to work in my former life, I worked in sports, and my friend was from Yugoslavia, and she told me that I had to go to Croatia. And it took me, it was still Yugoslavia when she told me I had to go. And by the time I could make any time to go, it was 2005, and it was totally different. And I decided to go to Croatia. A friend of a friend was supposed to show me around, and he was trying to think of where he was going to show me. When he heard that I was a cheese importer, he said, I know, I need to show you the special cheese. I need to show you Paški Sir. And I'm like, okay, we can do that. But for once, I'd like to go on vacation and not think about cheese the whole time. But okay, let's go see cheese. So he said, let's meet 2 days from now, go to Pag, I'll pick you up and I'll show you this cheese. So I consult my maps, my guidebook. I'm in a place called Opatia, which I don't recommend. I didn't like it. I see I have to take a bus to Rijeka, and then I have to take a ferry. And the ferry is a very normal way to travel around through Croatia and go to the islands. So the ferry stopped on one island, and then it got to the island of Pag, to the town of Navalja. So I get off. It was fantastic. It was turning out to be a beautiful afternoon. I went for a long walk. The sun was setting. I met this Scottish girl. We went for dinner. It was great fish. I saw Paški Sir on the menu. I was like, well, we have to have it. No, I don't usually do fish and cheese, but it's a special thing. It comes to the table. I drizzle the olive oil, and I said, this is delicious, but I'm here on vacation. Let me just go have fun. Next morning, I'm sitting having a great coffee, which is the culture there. I see an Illy sign, a Segafredo sign. It's beautiful out. And I start getting texts from this friend. And he said, where are you? And I said, oh, I'm in this lovely square, blah, blah, blah. I'm explaining where I am. 20 minutes goes by. He said, I'm almost there. Another 10 minutes goes by, and he says, where are you? And I explain where I am once more. Another 15 minutes goes by and says, Michele, where are you? There's nothing like this anywhere in Pag Town. And I said, Pag Town? You told me to go to Pag. I'm on the island of Pag, but the boat left me in Navalja. And so he was expecting me to be 30 minutes away in Pag Town. So he had to drive over. He picked me up. I finally met him. We drove back to Pag Town, and we went and we knocked on your family's cheese plant door, Martina. And a guy opens up and he says, yes. And my friend, 6'8" tall, says, hi, I have this importer that's known for the States. I want to show her your wonderful cheese. He says, do you have an appointment? He said, no, but this could be really interesting for you. And he's like, nope. And he closes the door. So from that time to 6 months later, really knowing that I wanted to import this cheese, and I talked with my partner, and he said, okay. It was the hardest thing to do. First, I didn't speak the language. Then I had to figure out where I wanted to go. And the way that my mind works is, I love the cheese I have at the restaurant. So I asked my friend to call the restaurant and find out who made that cheese. He said, that's a dumb idea. I'm not going to do that. But I've found a lot of my products that way. So 1 year of fighting with him and getting nowhere. Then I met a woman in Astoria near my office. I walked into this cheese restaurant, and there was a woman from Berlin and a woman from Croatia. She said, I'm leaving for Croatia next month. I'll find out for you. By the time she came back, forgot everything. Another 6 months passed. I eventually got a name, but it was a farmer, so I couldn't buy from them. And then I got like the Chamber of Commerce to give me a person, and I drove down because I thought I needed somebody to translate for me. But when I started going to the cheese plants and talking to people, they understood Italian, the cheese makers. And I was like, I got it. Because if you speak a second language, and if you realize that if you talk technically, it's not necessarily even your first language that you can talk about it. I didn't learn how to talk about cheese in English until way after I knew how to talk about it in Italian. So my first cheese language is Italian, my second is Spanish, and my third is English. So I actually was able to communicate with even Ante, who was there in Italian, and that was my saving grace. So we went there, Martina, and finally I came back to the same cheese plant like 4 years later, not 5 yet. And every place I went, they gave me samples. And I was actually also in Europe for a big birthday party in Berlin. So I took all the cheeses, not all the cheese, because the guy who came from the Chamber of Commerce, like he used to close himself in his room and let me go out at night by myself. And I usually came home hungry because I wasn't able to really communicate the language. So I never knew how to ask for the right food. But he was like a recluse, but he came for the cheese. So I left him tons of cheese and I took the cheese with me and I had to make a decision. And my friends at the brunch in Berlin, it's when I decided for the 1 year aged cheese because it had so much more depth and character and nuttiness and that butter that you do so well with this cheese. And then it wasn't over. I called Paška Sirana and said, your cheese won out of the 3 producers. We want to work with you. Can you believe it? From the first knock to now, but they were still scared to work with us. They're thinking, we've never exported. Who are these people? How do I know I'm going to get paid? I don't want to do stuff that's special. I have to translate this. I have to do documents. So they never shipped anything. You know, I can't, if you think about it, can you believe it that I ended up working with you guys? It was so hard, but
We are so lucky.
I'm so hard-headed when I love
yes,
something.
You're hard-headed.
And I finally convinced them, but I needed to come down with another Croatian guy, sit down and say, okay, this guy's going to be in the middle for a while till you get comfortable with us, until you're sure that we're not running away with your money, that we're not running away with your cheese. You know, I'll program my cheese 1 year in advance. You know, I'll work with you, whatever you do, but come on, this is like a really cool opportunity. This is so special. And it is, Martina, your family just does such a fabulous job. Everyone, as you're trying that, do you get all the nuances, just the beautiful crystallinity, and just, there are 2 types of this cheese a little bit. Sometimes it's a little bit more acidic and you don't get as much nuttiness up front. And I hope that one day we move more to the total nuttiness, but I noticed that we normally get both of these. Sometimes the cheese will be a little bit less than 1 year because there's not enough, no matter what we book. They sell everything that they produce. And we're going to see some of what I call the Paška Ovca. I call them the midget sheep. We got to go see these because they're like these little 30-kilo sheep and they're smaller than most sheep, but they pack a punch. They do a ½ liter of milk per day, as opposed to like Manchego cheese that you all probably know. The Manchego sheep produces 2 to 2.5 liters a day. So it's about 10 sheep to make 1 5-pound wheel of cheese for the Paški Sir. It's crazy. So if you know,
Yes, I call Paška Ovca or Pag sheep. I call it a super animal because she's very, she's very, very resistible and very flexible to this hard island conditions. It's a really rocky island, and in winter it's really a little grass on it. So yeah, it's a super animal.
Up there I am on my favorite view, overlooking Pag town on one side, and the other side is going up and around to head to one of the other producing towns. And that's the mountain range in the back that creates that Buda wind to the island. Look at that. Is that amazing? That's so beautiful. I could just watch this all day. Okay, this is really fun.
I remember this.
Yeah, I know. We went looking for this everywhere, but for anybody who's been listening to some previous webinars, I talked about on the island of Sardinia, how as you drive around, everywhere you see like little signs that say formaggio or fiorisardo or pecorino sardo. On the island for Paški Sir, it's the same. Windows, lamp posts, electrical posts, but everyone is like, this is Paški Sir for sale in like 4 languages. So I dragged Martina all over town just to take a lot of pictures of these to show it, which is so much fun. Here's the ladies with their lace. Maybe Martina, you want to talk a little bit about this tradition, which is so lovely. We're making them wait for the sheep.
Yes, Pag lace, yes, my island is very interesting. We have a lot of brands and a lot of things that we are famous for in Croatia, of course. But yes, when you think of Pag, the island of Pag, you can the associations are cheese, Paški Sir cheese. So Pag lace, which is very very famous, and it is protected under UNESCO, and it's a really it's a handwork which is for many years presented here. So on all of our cheeses we have a lace because it's a part of our identity. It's really cheese and this lace, they go together because they are two of the things that we are the most proud of. And then there is also lamb, because we have a lot of sheep, so we have also Pag lamb.
So here we are inside Paška Sirana's cheese plant, and you see lots and lots of cheeses aging. Don't get fooled that they're so clean. There's generally mold all over cheese, and they just keep getting cleaned off a little bit at a time so that the mold doesn't stick and then stain the cheese. You see me with Ante, who is one of the owners. He's the CEO of Paška Sirana, and Martina here. And before Martina joined, when her father passed away, and then she took over the family's side of the business with Ante, it was a lot more difficult for me to communicate, but having Italian in common with Ante made it, you know, all the more worthwhile. So this is the guy who I think it was one of your family, Martina, who initially closed the door in our faces. This is the guy who eventually I had to win over his heart from being worried to being super happy to have Forever Cheese as part of the family. And this to me is like gold, you know, peeking and holding aside all of our cheeses. Usually there's like little signs on them that says hold for Forever Cheese, don't touch them. And you have young and aged cheeses here, because you can have Paški Sir at 3 months, which is the general larger quantity that goes, or the Paški Sir more aged 10 to 12 months, which is what I want to have because it's so much part of the culture. But then we need to hold on to that, which is there. So you had mentioned that, you know, when we started working together was when your father, who had been sick for a long time, unfortunately passed away. But the good that came out of that was that we got you and your brother, who run the plant together with Ante Ostaric.
Ostaric, yes, Ante Ostaric. He is my father's partner, and yes, my father and Ante and one more of them, their partner, they are the most responsible for what is Paška Sirana today. So I'm very grateful and very happy that I have a possibility to go on with this business, because our product is very good, and it's really not hard to promote Paški Sir, because it's such a good product.
Well, it is hard to promote it just because it's so expensive in the place. It has this great mystere to it. You know, in Croatia, it is like for the upper class, for the people who have the money. Here it was a new thing. It was Forever Cheese's way to bring a piece of Croatia and introduce and try and get people to understand more that, you know, about where is Croatia, what is Croatia, what are the beautiful things that are offered. And to me, this is just such a special product, but it's very expensive. So it's important to convey why. You know, we're going to go see our midget sheep, the Paška Ovca, that produce, you know, just that half-liter milk a day, where it takes, you know, 10 or 12 sheep to make a wheel of cheese, whereas like a manchego might be, you know, only 8, because they produce 2.5 liters a day. It also depends on the yield of the milk. So the fact that it's aged 1 year and there's a lot of loss, the inability, the unavailability of the milk, the fact that the sheep only produce milk for 6 months of the year, all of the fact that the cheese comes off an island, and the fact that, you know, then how do I get it? I do it through Italy. And so, you know, then there's Germany saying, when we first started, I don't know if you knew the story, but the van that you guys had, Germany wouldn't let it through. They're like, no, you need to change this, 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 this. And finally, you guys had to buy a new van just to bring my cheese to Milan to ship it to me. I mean, things are crazy. You need an export certificate. You needed to do this. So if you really don't have like this great desire, you know, it's a lot of work in general just to be an importer and to bring all of these things. But even as the producer, having to figure out all the paperwork that's involved to get this all done. And that, you know, on its own. I'm still trying to convince some new people from the north of Italy who are very scared because it's like a lot of stuff you need to do. So we don't think about that, I guess, as we're just a consumer going to buy things and have a lot of choices, you know, just how complicated some of those things are, how much we have to work to get these jewels here. But for me, it's a jewel. So, you know, it has to be curated in the proper fashion. Look at that. Here we go. Midget sheep, Paška Ovca. What was the name of the shepherd, Martina?
Benito.
Benito?
Benito,
Benito was funny. He was running around there and he was making fun of me in my little mini skirt saying, what are you doing running after sheep in the fields with a mini skirt on? And
he liked you.
I'm glad to know that. Yeah, we made gestures to each other. So everybody, like sheep or any animals that are out in the field, they have to be marked for people to know which is their sheep versus others. So you see some little markings on the wool, and then they usually mark the ears well, and the ears are marked with like their numbers and like a traceability factor, so you can know everything there is about that sheep. You can tell, you know, looking at the terrain, you know, the grass is a little bit different and more sparse, although honestly, this looks like more than I'm used to seeing. And then you see some terrain. So there's some hilly parts, which are way more rocky and that lunar quality that you have. And then there's the brambles. And it's the underbrush that's really so important here. When I was reading everything that went into the PDO, the DOP that was made, and so much of it was the special nature of all the flowers and the different things that you might find in this, as well as just that saltiness like we talked about from the Buddha that brings all the salt on the grass and the brambles that then the sheep eat, which is translated into when it's milked and when you taste this like little bit of a salty butterscotchy flavor that comes to this cheese, which is just so amazing. Here's just some closer up so you can see all the different types of the Paška Ovca. There's all different colors, all different types. This looks like one big fluff ball. This was a really fun time. We were doing a television piece. And so we were standing in the middle of this, and then they just called all the sheep and they were just swirling around and around and around and around. It was crazy great. This was like more sheep than I'd ever seen in all the years I had ever been, you know, climbing over people's backyards or running around just looking for them. Next slide, I think we have some more cool sheep faces. Look at that. Who doesn't want one of those? But look at how different they are, because we have some comparative sheep too. How many sheep do you guys have? 3,000?
Yes, we have the biggest herd on the island. And about 3,000 sheep and 20 people just working outside on the 5 location on the island. They take care of our sheep in the period of milking, which is from January to June or July, this first period of year. They have to milk it sheep in the morning and in the evening, twice a day. And that is the time when pug shepherds have the most work to do. Yes, we also buy milk from our 134 cooperants, or 134 families that have their own little herds of sheep. And I have to say, which is very, very special, that we have some some cooperants or some partners for buying milk for 40 years, which is, I think, something that
it's hard to do. You have to keep them very happy for them to stay faithful for you. But then again, there's only like 4 producers on the island, right? How many producers of DOP Paški Sir are there? Like that really produce
9,
like
about 9 producers.
There are 9?
9 now, yes.
There were like there were like 3 major ones when I was looking.
Yes,
right?
yes. The 3 main cheese factories, and then also this little producers that were also registered, because with getting PGO mark, they cannot sell anymore Paški Sir under the
that
name.
Of course, I know. And totally on the island, there's about 20,000 sheep, right? And then the rest of those all go to like being made lamb, not milk.
35,000 sheep.
35,000 sheep.
That is some official number, but I don't know. It's about
the sheep definitely outnumber the people.
The people, yes. There's about 7,000 people on the island, and that is I told the biggest number. I think it's even less, but yes, sheep.
That's when they're partying in Zirce, in the party beach.
In the summer, many more. In the summer, many more. Yes, we didn't mention Zirce. Zirce beach is it's also on our island. I've mentioned before that Pag Island is very famous for the lamb, for the cheese, of course, lace and salt, but also
for
the
partying.
Beach. Yeah, party. It's a party island.
24/7 party beach, which I've only just walked on during the day.
Croatian Ibiza. Yeah.
Yeah, it is Croatian Ibiza. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal, and there's lots of great and big DJs and music and going on, and just yeah.
So many diversities on our islands. It's so little, but so many different things that offers.
It's true. So here we have sheep with a view. I had mentioned if anybody was listening to my series on Italy, we were talking a lot about the microclimas and how important that is for microclima, how important that is for the milk and for the cheese itself. So the fact that you have the sea nearby, it's more arid, that gives a different flavor to the way the sheep lives and breathes and when it eats. And there's with that talk again about how the winds blow the salty Adriatic on the grass, and all of this adds to their diet and their terroir, and their diet contribute in the flavor of the milk, which turns into something very special when it comes into the cheese. So these all factors, if you took these little midget sheep and you put them in Piemonte or you put them in Wisconsin, the cheese would not taste the same, even though it's the same animal, because you need all those other factors, even if you took the cheesemaker with you. So this is all very, very characteristic to this particular cheese, and why it was able to obtain the PDO status as well. Here, my hair is much shorter and redder, but then we're with Nenad. I would joke that Nenad and I were having a competition for whose hair could get longer, because his is longer here and curly. But Nenad used to work for many years at the plant before he moved on to do other things, and still does some consulting, but he was my first point of contact for having the most English when we would write for, but he loved being with the cheese and in the plant, and so he wasn't always as quick to answer my emails as the people today, which are great. So we were just discussing there about all the sheep, and this was still in the time we were with the journalists and talking about what was so special about Paški Sir, and why, I went to all of this trouble to try and get the cheese off the island and bring it to the States. An underlying reason was I needed to get back to Croatia. I needed an excuse to always go back to Croatia. So here, just for comparison, we have some different sheep. This is the Manchego sheep. I thought it was good to show you everybody knows Manchego sheep cheese. The Manchego, as you can see, has a different face. It has different hair. The terroir of La Mancha is I won't say way greener. This is the time of year it's very green, but La Mancha can get very brown and dried up in the summer, but it's very flat, and it does have more grass and more grazing. And you are not close by any means to any body of water, so it's not arid there. So very, very different climate. And then on your right, we have the Siciliana from Italy, which we use a lot in the production of our Fulvi Pecorino Romano. Both the Manchego sheep and the Siciliana have very similar butterfat properties, very high butterfat, great quality milk, about the same 2 liters a day for the sheep, as opposed to that minimal half-liter total of sheep that the Paška Ovca does. So that's just so that you can have some things, because again, there's so many different types of animals in the world, and with different butterfats, just like there's different types of fruits and vegetables. And sometimes we kind of just don't think about that. We're used to what we're thought, and we think that there's like maybe 1 or 2 and just not the complete variety of things that there are. For properties, both sheep and goat have a different casein breakdown, so there are smaller proteins, and it's more absorbed in your body more easily than a cow's milk cheese would be. For the casein breakdown in the milk itself. As the different types of sheep, we talked about that some of them have more or less butterfat. They can give more milk or less milk depending where they are and the type of breed that they are. So the Manchega sheep gives about 2 liters. The Siciliana gives about 2.5 liters. The Sarda sheep in Sardinia gives more. The Paška Ovca that we're talking about for Paški Sir gives about ½ liter. So we thought we would show you a little bit about how the cheese is made. For those of you who have never seen cheese being made, the whole point of it is you are transforming milk, which is something liquid, into something solid. And to do that, you need a starter culture if you're making an enzymatic cheese, and then you need rennet, which is a coagulant. Because there's 2 general ways of making cheese. One is something we call lactic fermentation, where you're acidifying the milk, almost making it go bad, so that that's what is the solidifying factor, and you almost add no rennet at all to it. And then that's kind of like your white goat cheese that gets very crumbly. And then you have enzymatic, where you're taking the starter, you're adding the rennet, and you're transforming liquid into solid. So when you add the rennet, the milk slowly becomes more pudding-like until it gets like one big like gelatin pudding. And what you'll need to do is then you have to break that curd, and depending on whether it's a younger or a more aged cheese, the size of your curd is going to be larger or smaller. And here, little Miss Muffet knew what she was talking about. She was talking about curds and whey when we were kids. I know I'm dating myself, but I think that nursery rhymes always stay pretty much around. So the whole principle is you need to separate the curds from the whey so that the whey doesn't make the curds turn bitter. And that's the whole process. Once you cut the curd and then separate it and then mold it and then press it, this is all part of the process of getting the whey out. And then we'll eventually have you talk about what you do with the whey. But this is the general process of the cheese. And then you will also want to salt it. And then and then from there you'll go and you'll age it. So in the next slide that we'll come back to, we have part of the process here. We're on to the next one, which the other one was showing cutting the curd, moving it. So you had some of the whey coming up to the top. And here, as Martina and I were talking about before, this is pressing the cheese. This is one way of pressing it that in most of my factories in other countries, they don't do it this way. I did see this in Portugal. And I think I heard that the Dutch might do it this way. But it's for me, it was more unusual to see it. So, but here they're going to press the curd down and then they're going to extract the whey and it's going to come out on the bottom. So here we'll let Martina talk a little more about here, but I'll just talk about that in the back. You have, once the cheese was pressed, this comes down like a knife and slices it into pieces in the curd. They take a square of the curd and they're putting it into the molds here. And then this little thing with the circle on the top is the lid. And then it goes behind into this vertical press. There are both vertical and horizontal presses. And then one goes on the top of the other. And with pneumatic pressure, you're pressing the cheese for a few hours. And you would want to talk a little bit about the manual nature of this cheese?
This is a really, our cheese is really a handwork, and people and our workers are really important in this process of production. We have a modern factory. Our new plant was built in 2008. Okay, now it's not so new, but yeah, it's not so old anyway. And yeah, we built it from the pre-European Union funds before Croatia entered European Union. Pre-accession funds. Yes, we have many machines that are helping and easing the process, but the main factor, the main thing still remains, and that is a man and the hands.
The hands are very important. It's just, we almost always today you have the machinery and everything that's going to help do that, but it is always the touch of the cheesemaker, of the people who do it, of the expertise of the fingers, knowing how much to press it into the mold, how to help it along. And yes, it's very, you know, it's very important, the manual factor, the human factor.
Manufactura, yes.
Yeah, so here we have the other end of the process. The cheeses have been pressed and now they're taking the lid off, taking the cheeses out, and they're putting it on the rack here. And from here, it's going to go into the salmura, how they
Salamura, yeah, salty water, salamura, yeah.
And so there's two different ways of salting the cheese. You can either dry salt cheese, or you can put it into a saltwater brine. And so it goes in there, and it's important to salt the outside of the cheese because it helps to dry it. And push out more of the whey, and it helps to start setting the rind so that it can continue on to age and to do what it is. It's a very, very important factor in, and in fact, a lot of recipes for cheese making don't even have salt in the recipe. It just, the salting happens just when it goes into the brine.
And we have salt from Pag as well. So it's because of, we have salt factory in Pag. Then we also have a salt which we put in salamura that is from Pag.
Yeah, I mean, if I have to say, you know, how much I love Pag, but that's one element that I'm not too crazy about. It's super salty. It's really salty. Anyway, so what's after the salting? Let's have a look. Ah, very important. Every cheese, no matter if it's a PDO cheese or not a PDO cheese, needs to have traceability. You need to be able to mark it with a lot, so that if something happens, you can go back and find out where it was produced, what day, and everything. So on here, this is a casein plaque that gets put on when it's young. And it's the name of the company, Paška Sirana. It's Paški Sir cheese. And then this is their lot number, so that they always have traceability whenever it's needed. On behind it, what's the number behind it?
Behind it, it's not a number. There are two letters, PS for Paška Sirana. Yes, and that is our sign, traditional. Yeah.
Every single wheel also has this, right?
Yeah.
So you can always determine where this came from if somebody wanted to look. And these are important in our industries because sometimes, you know, people will, you need to have more, you need to have the name on it too, you need to have the seal. But sometimes people are like, oh, that cheese wasn't made here. And so then you have small little things that we know about that determine it. Manchego too has, you probably, it would be a cool thing for you guys to devise. Manchego came up with some casein plaques, not just in the center, because if you cut it, you can't see it, but they put it around the whole wheel. So if you make cuts, it shows up each time. And this is to stop pirating. So people try and charge you too much money for something that it isn't your cheese. So just some different views of the cheese aging. What I love about this cheese too is it doesn't age on steel, it ages on the wood boards, and they're very good about cleaning them off. But the wood makes the cheese happy. It doesn't always make our governments happy. So that's why we have to make sure that we keep them really nice and clean. As you'll notice, they're all very clean rinds, and we're going to show you why, because we're going to show you some that are not as clean, and then we're going to explain what the importance of mold is. So this to me is a beautiful photo. This is natural. The mold grows. You have white molds, you have some blue molds, you have some green. This here, if your cheese gets like this, be happy. If it gets inside, it's okay. You can just cut it out and go on or shave it off. If you have, I just ate an apple earlier and there were a couple of bruises. So I just cut around the bruises and I kept eating the apple. So what's the big deal with mold? I don't know why our country, we've gotten so stuck on, you know, we're better than we used to, but why we're so stuck on mold? So mold is good. If you have something like one of your cheeses that never grows mold at all, that's when you should get worried. Say, what sort of chemicals did they put on my cheese? Because cheeses are aged in humid areas. The humidity is a very important factor in its evolution, in its aging process. So seeing those molds, we know that the cheese is aging properly and it's happy. If we want to make it look more beautiful so that it doesn't kind of spread over the place, well, we take it to the car wash. And here is one type of car wash where we just kind of put it in and brush, 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 like you could be doing a shoe shine. Also, there's another kind, which is literally like a little mini car wash, which has the plastic that hangs down like spaghetti, and you kind of put it on a conveyor belt and it goes through and it washes it off and it comes out the other side. The point of it is this is mainly for packaging and for travel, and so it happens so often for so many years that people weren't used to seeing it, and so trying to reassociate people with that idea. It is true that if we take certain young cheeses and leave the mold on the rind for a very long time, then it might be stained and it might be really hard to get off, and then it might not look as pretty. So sometimes it just makes perfect sense that you clean it off, and then little by little it might grow some. But that to you should just be from now on a sign of healthy cheese and make you smile. It makes me smile. And what do people think of mold in Croatia? Do they give a hard time?
The same. I also try to teach them that it is nothing that they should be worried about. But yes, it's always questions with that. Although when it goes, it is always when they come to our cheese aging room, which is like a cheese heaven. And yes, then they ask. But in shops, it is rare thing that such things happens. But you know, as you said with the apple. I also, when I have something at home, I don't throw it in the garbage. I remove that part, and then it's okay. Especially with cheese.
There's this
yes.
There's this website called Adriatic Gourmet. Like some of the people were asking where you can get Croatian oil, and I said it doesn't have to be, because when you have mold on cheese, one way to clean it is just to take some oil and rub it around the rind. And I mean, it can be any oil at all. Although it's great to eating the Paški Sir, I talked about drizzling oil on top and just a really good extra virgin olive oil. But like this one company who wrote me like a couple weeks ago, he wrote me complaining a bit about the mold on the outside. And I said the same thing, look, take a rag, wipe it off, take some oil, wipe it off, your cheese is great. And he was just like, he's like, say hello to Martina, maybe I get a medal. He's sold so many wheels of Paški Sir, and Dalmatinac are 90% cow's milk. The cow's milk comes from the mainland, 10% sheep's milk. Cheese during this times because they just focus on Croatian specialties. So it's super cool.
Great.
It's there, but it's very cool. And actually some of those cheeses that you guys saw agings, they weren't all Paški Sir because they have more cheeses there. They have the Dalmatinac that I do, and they have a couple other varieties also, but I'm doing two and I'm very happy. The second one helps.
That's great. There are a lot of Croatians in United States, so it's also this ethnic market is also important. But for me, it was great when I visited New York, and when I visited you, and you we were going to see the shops where Paški Sir was produced. I was super excited because it was such a good feeling to see it on such a great places like Marie's Cheese Bar and Shop and
places that don't have that culture that we've managed to get them to to
Great,
really,
great. It was a great feeling.
we'll keep working at it. Okay. All right. Martina, thank you so much for coming back on.
Of course, it is my pleasure.
Oh, I was like,
I'm just so
"Butter,
sorry.
oh."
Yeah, I'm just so sorry that I couldn't before, but it was I was there and it was really, and I couldn't hear your voice message, so it was.
No problem. Not at all.
Thank
Give
you,
them
thank you
kisses
so
for
much.
me.
Thank you, thank you. Bye. Mwah.
ChocoHigos. Yum. How can you go wrong with chocolate and figs? I mean, the truth is I'm very excited and proud of this product because the whole idea of it was to make a collaboration between two different producers that Forever Cheese worked with. We have fig guys and we have chocolate guys. And honestly, I grew up and figs weren't my thing. I liked like fig Newtons. They were okay, but other figs kind of hurt my teeth when I would bite into them. But when I went to Spain and I tasted some figs, I was like, wow, these are kind of juicy. They don't hurt when I eat them. And these are pretty delicious. And then I thought about it and I was like, I love when my producers collaborate together. So I called the Caro brothers. It's Pepe, Manuel, and Fernando. And I explained to them what my idea was. And then I called up my fig guys and you'll see the families. And I said, hey, I'd like to do this collaboration. And so they agreed. So we came up with, we thought of the name with ChocoHigos, chocolate figs. And I think the next slide might be, I don't know if it's the map or not, but it's just super simple. We have figs and we have chocolate, and that's the only thing that makes them. And it literally gets bathed. The figs get destemmed by hand, and then they get immersed in a beautiful chocolate, which is it's not an overly dark, it's like a 52%, but it's just this recipe that they do, which has like hints of nutmeg and earthy and clove and cinnamon. I always say that the Caro chocolate is kind of like what Oaxacans wish their chocolate could be like, because for me in Oaxaca, just those sugar crystals really drive me nuts. But the two together, I just feel is like irresistible. And I'll show you kind of where the collaboration is in, I think, the next slide. So in Alcudia, the figs start here, and then they go north, somewhere in between Madrid, northeast of Madrid and northwest of Barcelona, and they go to Aragon, to the town of Calatayud. There's no reason to go there, honestly, except for this chocolate plant. They get bathed in the figs, and then they travel back down to this plant outside of Valencia where they get packaged. They go through a metal detector because this is kind of what a lot of larger chains want today, to see the security and the safety of their products, and then they get shipped to me. Here we have the masters of all things fruit. The company is called Pyrope. This is the Valles family. So to the left, we have Guillermo, which is the oldest brother, and he's the soccer player in the family. We have the baby next to him, which is Jesus. And I never remember what Jesus does in the plant. Andres in the red sweater kind of takes care of all the planning, all of the logistics, and he also is the guy that I work with to develop my products. Luis on the right is the plant manager and operations. And then we have mom and dad started it all sitting on a stoop selling this concentrated grape musting pumpkin liquid called arrope, which by the way is outstanding with fresh cheeses and as a cocktail. And it's just a really cool, quirky thing. I still need to learn the dog's name, but they're a wonderful family who just do all natural products. They want the best in quality. They think like us. We've been working together since like 1997. And just a few years after, I was at a gas station waiting to go visit a producer of mine, and I walked inside and there were these huge 1 kilo slabs of chocolate. And these were Caro chocolate bars. And I call it my truck stop chocolate because I found it at a truck stop, and I was on a bus trip, and this was after 9/11. So I didn't have my little what do you call it, the Swiss Army knife with me. So I couldn't break this chocolate because it was thick, and I'm sitting there trying to break it on the back of the bus. And it took me a really long time to get to a place where I could actually taste and eat it. And I was just in love with this chocolate. So here we go. We have Pepe to the left, Manuel in the middle, and Fernando on the right. Fernando's the master chocolatier. He learned and honed his trade in Germany. Manuel handles the finances, and Pepe is my contact because he does sales when he's not doing like Olympic bike riding. And I always kind of laugh. I look at these pictures and we just see time go by, not so much when I look in the mirror, but when I met Fernando, he actually had a lot more hair than that. So it's really fun to see them, and I don't get to see them very often because they're in the middle of nowhere, and sometimes they come visit, but they do an amazing collaboration of the two sets of brothers. And I happen to have some ChocoHigos with me too. They honestly make me think of when I grew up with something called a Malomar, which was like a marshmallow on a cookie enrobed in chocolate. But I just love these things, and they don't last very long at all. And the idea of pairing them with the Paški Sir, which has this butterscotchy nature, so you have salty butterscotchy with this wonderful richness of the chocolate, and the texture to me is just a really fun, unique way of doing it. I had one customer who would make chocolates with cheese inside, but I actually prefer doing it this way. You could even take the Paški Sir and shave it or grate it on top too. That might be really fun, even as a presentation, like sprinkling it on the plate while you have a chunk of cheese, a couple of the ChocoHigos, and then you have, you know, shaves or shreds or grates of the cheese on top. So always thinking of different fun ways to pair things. And then this is what the fig looks like without the chocolate. So as you can see, it doesn't have, you can see the outer rind, which is very thin, and then you have this juicy fig inside. And it's a little different shape too. This is called the pajarero or the calabacita. And then there are many other different varieties of figs that exist also. I think we move to, here's Paula. So this is a mostarda. And I'm sure some people were like scratching their head and like, what does mostarda have to do with cheese? Ew, that doesn't sound very good. But mostarda in Italy is the combination of candying a fruit and adding a mustard extract that is very, very spicy. And that's what a mostarda is. It comes from Lombardia, and there are two types. There's Mostarda di Cremona. So Cremona is a town where they do whole fruits that are candied over a long period of time, and then they add the mustard extract, versus Mantova, where they do sliced fruits, which is much more labor intensive, much more artisanal. And then they add the mustard extract. So the whole point here is not just eat the fruit, but you want to eat the fruit together with the liquid, because the fruit is candied and sweet, and the spicy nature is in the liquid. The mustard extract is actually a hazmat. It comes in sealed drums, or you have to buy it in a vial in the pharmacy. And only when you add sugar to this crazy spicy thing, it has a chemical reaction, and then it becomes edible. I know it's crazy, and I would have chefs fighting all the time that I bring just the mustard extract for them because they wanted to make their own mostarda. And I was like, look, I'm in the food business. I don't transport hazmats. So Paula, who we saw before, she's been doing this for so many years, but she's a pharmacist by nature, and her real passion was food. So she started a company of making mostardas where she gets to use all of her background. She has to wear her goggles and her gloves, and her and her sister, and basically they're all women in the production. So they hand cut the fruits, they candy it over a long period of time, and then they add the mustard extract. And I love their company because they use just local fruits, local producers, except for the blood orange that we do, which is a sweeter one. It's a confiture and not a mostarda. And their flavors are just so amazing. And the pink grapefruit is new for us, and I'm a grapefruit fanatic. So don't you agree? The mostardas are really yummy. And since it's such a big flavor, you need a cheese that's going to stand up to it. So this is a cheese that can stand up to it and pair really well together. A mostarda on its own is also really great with charcuterie. It's very typical, used with boiled meats, like bollito misto, which is like a boiled veal roast, and then like a white water mostarda, because we do white watermelon, green tomato, plum, pear, crabapple. We have an orange with chocolate pieces, which is dynamite. But this whole idea is that there's like a little jar on the table and you go and you get like a veal roast or a brisket, and then you have that soft, tender meat with this nice, spicy, you know, accompaniment that goes with it. So it's just fun with all of these on your plate. You've got the color of the pink, you've got the dark brown, you have the rust nature of the cheese. It just creates a beautiful plate with great, wonderfully special, unique flavors, and just super festive for the holiday time. So I hope that you've been having fun with this type of condiment. Here we are in Italy, and this is Mantova. So Mantova is part of Lombardy. It's the lower part. A lot of people think it's part of Emilia-Romagna. And then we have Cremona, which is a little bit more northwest here. But this is where Paola has this beautiful casale. It's like a farmhouse where they do their production. It's really quite beautiful, and I love Mantova. And Mantova's home of the sprizzolona. So I think that might have been in my very first webinar with Michael. It's just this big, crumbly, oversized cookie. That's so wonderful. And so that's what's home as well. So today we had so much the pleasure to have you today, Martina, to talk about the Paški Sir. And of course, we had the Mostarda from Italy, and we had the chocolate figs, ChocoHigos, we call them, from Spain. And I can't thank all of you enough who are listening today, who have taken your time to be here. It means the world to me. I also, like the people I work with, mean the world to me. And the challenge of bringing these products to market, I mean, if it were easy, it would be boring. I mean, could always do better. So hopefully if you love it, you'll talk to other people about them, and that's always helpful. And I'd love to wish you all a really fantastic holiday, that everybody's safe, healthy, that you have lots of cheese and all these products with you so that you don't want, if it's snowing or if you're on the beach or wherever you are. And I hope to see you again soon at another one of these webinars. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And thank you, Michael, for everything and for your time. And Martina, how do you say happy holidays in Croatian? I'm very remiss on my Croatian language right now.
Sve najbolje, that means all the best. We can say like that maybe. Or Sretan Božić i Nova Godina, that means Merry Christmas and all the best in the new year.
That one.
Yes, I hope it will be better than 2020. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure.
Well, I have to say that this particular cheese isn't like any cheese that I've had before. There's a lot of times you can say, well, this is like a nasiago, or this is like a pecorino, or this is like this. This is actually such a unique flavor. As you mentioned, it's a little bit of butterscotch and salt. And if you love butterscotch, which I do, and but you don't like that sweetness that it brings, this has got the right amount of saltiness. It's magnificent. Pairs beautifully with everything. So it's just an absolute dream. I don't have much left because I've literally been eating. I can't stop eating it. It's that good.
It's like candy. It is like candy.
So thanks for sharing. And it was very nice meeting you. And Michele, always a pleasure to have you on. And I look forward to our plans that we'll be setting forth in 2021.
Yes.
And this will be on my YouTube channel, Michael Landis Cheese. And everybody, I hope you have a wonderful holiday and a very, very happy new year.
We're hoping to do something in Portugal in early first quarter next year, and something on charcuterie as well.
Absolutely. Whenever you're ready, I'll be ready.
I'll write you. Bye, everyone. Happy
care.
holidays.
All right.
Be
Thank
well.
you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.